Watch how the third quarter goes down. At least they called this one. Asia Wilson creams Lexie Hull like she did 5 times in game 1. Peggy Hammock get 15 calls in a row and one goes another way and she starts screaming and crying. Asia Wilson doesn't like Lexie Hull. She's always pushing her, but that's an illegal screen, and then Lexie Hull gets called for a foul.
Game 2 was just lost by the Indiana Fever. The Las Vegas Aces were essentially handed it by the referees, not because they were outmatched. 41 infractions, 16 in a single quarter. Players are being flung to the floor. Despite playing through a back ailment sustained in Game 1, Asia Wilson managed to come away with plaudits for her stature. This was not a game of basketball. It was anarchy masquerading as protection. In light of this, how did the Fever manage to fight back during all of that? And what does returning to Indiana entail? Post a comment saying, "Let's go, Lexie," to show your support for the Fever. Let's leave.
I mean, it feels like a physical game every game. Feels like it's been a physical season. But yes, I think, I feel like I've been on the ground a little bit more this series so far. But we just keep getting back up, so that's all you can really say.
How on earth did Indiana enter Las Vegas, take on the 2-time champions, handle whistles that were already pointing in the wrong direction, and still win by a double digit? The first game wasn't only a win. The league as a whole was put on notice. The Fever entered that first game with a level of composure that is uncommon from a young squad. Kelsey Mitchell immediately dispelled any skepticism by dominating the scoreboard with a playoff career-high 34 points. Indiana retaliated against Vegas every time they applied pressure, controlling the tempo instead of employing flair.
Take that! Hell yeah! Hell yeah! That's one! That's one! That's one!
Yeah! Fever go!
They ain't song and dance to me, man. I'm just grateful, man. I love basketball. I love playing with my team, so let's take what we can get.
Then there was the alleged trump card, which was the Aces. The MVP, Asia Wilson, was caught up in a shooting nightmare. On 22 tries, 6 make it. 6 that she was forced into tough looks by Indiana's defense, who also made sure she had to battle for every bucket and disputed everything close to the hoop. That was the tale. One squad is performing flawlessly and without fouling. On their home court, however, the dominant squad was unable to purchase rhythm.
Asia Wilson, look at that foul they called for. Yeah, saved her. That's some bullcrap. I love Aaliyah Boston. Great job today playing defense. Look at that. Another foul. Bailed out by the refs. I get pissed off. This is the worst one. They call this a jump ball. How is that a jump ball? Nobody even had possession. Aaliyah Boston, that's anything is over the back. Not a jump ball.
The background at home, where the whistle was bending in their direction, made it much more painful for Vegas. National media coverage already points to a straightforward series victory. Rather, the Fever defended their position and won by a score of 16 points. The flaws were recognized right away by fans. Even in a victory, that foul count seemed strange. However, the significance of Indiana's victory overshadowed the grievances. However, that subtle bias was not disregarded. The Fever took care of business nonetheless, so it was dismissed.
And Asia Wilson and the Las Vegas Aces lose Game 1 on their home court to the Indiana Fever, 89-73. The Indiana Fever were in control of this game from start to finish.
The Aces were motivated by that humiliation. They couldn't afford to lose by 16, which is why they charged into Game 2 with the intention of turning the tide. How far they would go was the question, not whether Vegas would reply. However, at what price did the Aces choose to retaliate? Was the second game even a basketball game? Or did the refs merely dress up a fight as playoff intensity? It was evident in the first few minutes that the Aces had no intention of playing clean.
In the WNBA, you cannot blindside somebody and set a screen on them without enough time for letting the player being screened react. And then look at this. This one, their arms lock up, but you gotta let go at some point. Like, you can't bring the person closer to you and just stay locked in Well, the offensive player is trying to get the rebound, but we know A'ja Wilson only receives fouls.
The Aces were motivated by that humiliation. They couldn't afford to lose by 16, which is why they charged into Game 2 with the intention of turning the tide. How far they would go was the question, not whether Vegas would reply. However, at what price did the Aces choose to retaliate? Was the second game even a basketball game? Or did the refs merely dress up a fight as playoff intensity? It was evident in the first few minutes that the Aces had no intention of playing clean.
Steph, why don't you think you were able to find any flow? And when that was the case, what are you trying to do to jumpstart things, maybe on the defense?
Well, it's hard for us to find flow when there's a foul call every 10 seconds. I mean, it just really is. And when they're at the free throw line, we can't get up and down the floor. And that's a challenge. They were much more aggressive and physical defensively. We didn't counter that with our off-ball actions or with our back cuts. So they took us out of our comfort zone. I mean, offense is about rhythm, it's about timing, it's about spacing. We allowed them to do that, and they kept us from doing it.
There was no sporadic physicality. It covered the whole plot. When they were cutting into the lane, players were pushed. Instead of using their feet, defenders used their forearms. Additionally, someone ended up sprawled on the floor on multiple occasions. Not merely the quantity of fouls stood notable, but also the manner in which they disrupted the Fever's tempo. This is a team that runs, shares the ball, and thrives in flow. And they were forced into a wrestling match against their will instead. Indiana was compelled to play choppy half-court setups, which are the least comfortable aspect of their personality, while Vegas piled up free throws.
Yeah, Lexie, obviously you were a late add to the injury report today. Just how are you feeling this morning with your back, and what do you have to do to be able to play?
I mean, I'm feeling sore still, but I think just a lot of treatment, trying to get, our bodies as ready as we can be. Part of playoffs, I think, for everyone is it's the end of the season. Everyone's a little fatigued, everyone's a little sore. So just trying to go out there and do the best I can. A lot of treatment with our trainers. I'm really thankful for them to spend a lot of time with me today, a lot of time with me yesterday, getting me ready for tonight.
It was not appropriate for Lexie Hull to be out there at all. She was designated as a game-time decision after suffering a back injury in Game 1. The majority of players would wait for the series to shift home while they sat and recovered. Rather, she taped herself up, fell to the ground, and was instantly the target of Vegas's brutal manner. You witnessed it live. She made contact after contact and bump after bump before repeatedly crashing on the hardwood. Hull, however, went to the arc and made 5 three-pointers in response, setting a scorching playoff record. It was defiant even though it wasn't tidy or attractive. She said after the game, "I'm still in pain, but I think it's just a lot of treatment trying to get our bodies as ready as we can be. We're simply persevering." That quote isn't from a highlight reel. That player refuses to give up even though she is aware that she is being punished.
This is what happened. They cut it to 8 and they get 4 fouls in a row. That was not a foul. That was not a foul. This is crazy. 4 consecutive fouls. So from 8, it goes to 13 really quick, and the rest was history. It looks like Howard got hit in the arm by 2 players. They don't call foul. It was a shot clock. But the rest of the game were just a whole bunch of fouls being called, people flying.
In the meantime, Hull's perseverance and the Fever attempting to salvage their season weren't much discussed nationally. It honored A'ja Wilson's achievements. 9 rebounds, 5 steals, 2 blocks, and 25 points. Those were the numbers that kept coming up. The way she accrued such figures was disregarded. She knocked people around, bullied her way into the misery, and benefited from calls that Indiana never seemed to receive. Observing fans pointed it out. However, her night was presented as dominant in the headlines. When half of the opposing starting are limping away, dominating is not the same as being fair.
Yeah, I mean, it's how you look at it. It looks, honestly, by some of the fouls and the way it was going, it looks like we were almost too physical, but yet at the same time, I feel like we have to be able to get that on the other end. I think, sometimes when you just look at the game as a whole, when you look at the way that it works, sometimes you manipulate it into different ways and you have smaller matchups. So, I mean, I just don't think it's really possible all the time for some of those smaller matchups to really do such a clean job of that. But hey, I'm here to hoop, so none of my business.
Aaliyah Boston experienced possession after possession of that world. She brought down 13 rebounds and scored 10 points, but it seemed like she was shoved to the back or struck in the ribs for each one. No calls were made as a result of paint touching that should have led to free throws. People seem to overlook that Boston is already acting like a veteran despite just being in her third season. She didn't get a footing against the Aces, but rather than moaning, she battled for every board. It gave the impression that her box score was stable, but in reality, she was playing survival basketball to reach those figures.
Lexie Hull kept her out of that space as much as she would have wanted to. She did end up with nice returns.
7-0. Aces run has been stopped. Sims in.
Additionally, Odyssey Sims allowed Indiana a chance to even breathe while the focus was on the names of the stars. 18 points for a player who was continuously attempting to dribble through double teams, getting hacked at the arms, and having any flow she found abruptly disrupted by whistles. After transforming partially damaged items into baskets, Sims watched as another standstill erased the subsequent trip down. Her annoyance was evident, yet she never let up. Every shove Vegas made was met with a retort from Sims.
Purcell on Young. Sims over. Asia Wilson, she had to put some extra arc on that.
It wasn't that Indiana lost the second game. The reason is because they were not permitted to play their game. Every surge was crushed by a shove or a whistle, even though the grit was present in Sims' drives, Boston's boards, and Hull threes. There were no strategic flaws revealed by the Aces. They rode to victory by relying on foul-heavy chaos. Who played better isn't the solution to the question of how the Fever lost the game. It's clear that Indiana's shooting and poise could have changed the tide of events if there hadn't been any disruptions. The true query is, what exactly changed in Las Vegas' strategy to push Kelsey Mitchell out of the spotlight if they required assistance from both the whistles and physical force? How did the referee's actual game plan alter to shut down Kelsey Mitchell so thoroughly if they were going to tip the scales in favor of the A's in Game 2? That was the other half of the differences between Games 2 and 3. She scored in every manner possible in Game 1, scorching Las Vegas for 34. Off the dribble, attack the rim, and catch and shoot. She felt suffocated by the second game. It was not because she abruptly lost the ability to score that her total fell to 13. The Aces entered with a single objective, to compress her until there was no more room for movement.
Steph, on that note, with Kelsey just having a little bit of a, they were able to contain her a little bit more. How did you feel like they were able to be successful in that regard?
I mean, the physicality won. She's like a little pinball. I know that the museum's right down the street, so sometimes I feel like she's getting pinged around everywhere.
Even when she didn't have the ball, they occasionally placed extra bodies on her to protect her face. Every cut she made resulted in bruising, and an aggressive hedge greeted every screen that was set up for her. That altered the entire flow of the Fever. Las Vegas shoved the ball into multiple hands rather than allowing Mitchell to set the pace and stretch the defense. Her passes were funneled into congested alleys by double teams. Additionally, it was typically late in the shot clock by the time she broke free for a clean look. Although the shift was well thought out and disciplined, it only seems cleaner on tape than it did in the game.
The physicality is out of control, that's for sure. I mean, you can bump and grab a wide receiver in the NFL for those first 5 yards, but you can do it in the W for the whole half court. You put two hands on somebody like that, it should be an automatic foul. They have the freedom of movement. Freedom of movement. There's no freedom. And I'm not saying that we're not fouling too. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's out of control.
Ironically, Becky Hammond later voiced her displeasure with the match's physical aspects. Consider that a whistle that halted and began the game in the Aces' favor had just rewarded them for their efforts throughout the evening. However, their own coach wasn't happy with how difficult things became. That particular element is significant because it demonstrates that the outcome was not only dependent on a tactical plan. Additionally, it was largely influenced by haphazard officiating choices. Mitchell was under pressure from the A's, but the distractions made it difficult to assess how successful those changes were in reality. Aaliyah Boston continued to struggle within 13 rebounds and 10 points. She played more like a linebacker smashing bodies than a center working out of the post on another difficult night. However, Vegas also made a smart move here. The floor was stretched. They moved her out of position and made mistakes that allowed Jackie Young and A'ja Wilson to attack without a real counter on the defensive.
Now the starting point guard, and here's Hull, an early test. Great sign because her shooting has been off. Yes. Mitchell. Short. Hull with another offensive rebound, turn, shoot, scores. 2 of their last 3. Hull again, yes. Oh,
You found it.
Afterward, there is Lexie Hull. For one night, the Aces might have been able to eliminate Mitchell, but they were unable to stop Hull. Recall that she had just sustained an injury during the first game. She was barely cleared to take the floor and was a game-time decision. In addition to dressing up, she tied the Fever playoff record and made 5 3-pointers. It's not a coincidence. That demonstrates mental toughness and is the clearest indication that Indiana will not give up, even in the face of a shortage of personnel.
First half had 9 points, but was just 1 of 5 from 3-point range. It was Lexie Hull doing the damage from 3, and now she's doing a Kelsey Mitchell imitation of the night. Sims gets the roll.
Las Vegas did indeed score their adjustments. They carried out a plan. They went away with the victory after leaning on the whistle. However, the board has changed. They won't be playing in Vegas the following time. The Aces will play more than simply Mitchell, Boston, and Hull in Indianapolis. They will be louder than any whistle in front of 17,000 bloodthirsty fans. When a team that has been beaten up, whistled out of time, and almost hurt while traveling gets to return to their own building, what happens? As the series moves to Gainbridge Fieldhouse, the Indiana Fever will soon learn that. The dynamic has shifted after 2 intense games in Las Vegas, where the Aces prevailed due to the arena's excitement and dubious whistles. The Fever at last get to enter a space that feels like their own, where thousands of voices, rather than being muffled, amplify every bucket from Kelsey Mitchell or Caitlin Clark.
If I could just ask you to look forward to this series going to your home court in Indianapolis, how much is that really going to make a difference in this series, and how much does it mean to you guys to have that home court advantage?
Yeah, I think it's going to be great. Our fans, they show up and they show out, and so for us just using that, our own energy, but also using the energy in the crowd, I think it's going to be really great for us.
Gainbridge has already demonstrated its versatility as a home court. Just this season, we've witnessed rival teams falter in the second half as the volume continued to rise. In Indy, the same momentum swings that vanished in Vegas come to life. At Gainbridge, there are never any dead moments. Despite runs, fouls, and missed calls, crowds remain boisterous. And now it's Indiana's time as Vegas capitalized on the enthusiasm of the fans to win Game 2. We haven't had a great experience there this season, which says a lot for a championship coach. Even Becky Hammond said, "This is significant because, with 17,000 people responding to it in real time, official bias cannot remain hidden. When Boston's post-ups make contact and the clamor erupts at every turn, officials won't miss it. They will not disregard the on-whole body inspections when the public calls for accountability. That is home court's underappreciated feature. You have constant pressure on every choice from those closest to you, in addition to the familiarity and rims."
Yeah, we're excited. I know the last time it was the first playoff game in a really long time, so to be able to have 2 more for our fans that have been there with us all season, really excited for that, and we definitely do feed off of their energy, so we're really looking forward to it.